Today I want to do something a little bit different and do a review of a knife sharpening system. So obviously this is primarily a knife channel. So I do reviews of different pocket knives, but a lot of people I found that buy a lot of knives don't know how to actually sharpen their own knives. So um, up until recently, most of my sharpening I've always done by hand. But there is a learning curve to that, and then even then, while I'm fairly decent at it, I find that I'm not going to get as uniform of a result as I do if I use a sharpening system that has some kind of a jig set up. And so today what I wanted to show you is one that's actually relatively simple in concept, but I have found has done a really good job. So there are a lot of systems out there that you actually use where you clamp the knife down and then you have a sharpening system on a rod that comes in at an angle. And of course, then you use that to sharpen your knife and get a consistent edge. I have purchased some of the non-name brand cheaper versions off of Amazon in the past, and while those worked, they weren't perfect. They required a lot of resetting and things that could mess up your angle, and they just weren't the best. And so when this came out, this is actually a sharpener from Worksharp. It's the Worksharp Precision Adjust Knife Sharpener. So not really the smoothest flowing name, but again, Worksharp Precision Adjust Knife Sharpener is what they call it. But when I first got this, I thought at the price point at the time, I think I paid 40 something, maybe $50 for it when I bought it. And I was kind of iffy on it, and I'll go into some of that as to why. But I will say that with some caveats now, I think I can recommend this product. And there are a lot of things that they did get right on this design. So I want to actually show you how this thing works and how well it works and what are some of the pros and cons and that kind of thing, in case you are somebody who purchases knives and you're just now getting to the point where it's like, well, some of my knives are getting dull and I need to sharpen them. I don't really want to send them away to get them sharpened. And to me, it always just feels better to do it yourself than to send it away, learning that skill set. And even though it's almost like cheating to use one of these, it's not so much of a skill set at that point. It's just nice to be able to get results that you can replicate easily and consistently, and I think this helps you do that. So just to kind of show you real quickly how this thing works, right? So there is what they call tri-rod abrasive, and this is basically three different abrasives, all right? So you have and I think I've already kind of worn it off here, but you have there, you can kind of see it. It's hard to see. It's got a lot of metal filings in there. I need to clean it. But 600 grit. You've got a 320 grit, so your coarse grit, your fine grit, and then you have a ceramic honing stone there as well. So, which is even finer than the 600. I think it's about double the 600. I'm not sure exactly what the grit is on the ceramic. But it's a finer stone than the 600. And quite honestly, that was my biggest complaint when I first purchased this, was there's not enough in between grits here. So you're going from a fairly coarse 320 all the way up to a 600, and then all the way up to something that I would guess is maybe around 1800 or so. And I could probably look that up and find out exactly, but I know that it's significantly finer grit than the 600. So I didn't like the fact that there were no in-betweens. So that was one of the things that I kind of struggled with initially. But anyway, we'll get into that a little bit more here in a bit. So this rod is magnetically just connected up here into the system. So the nice thing about that is it just clicks into place and you're good to go. This is one of the clamping systems, okay? So the nice thing about this clamping system is that it allows you to rotate the knife once it's clamped without actually having to take the knife back out of the clamp. So some of those cheaper systems that I mentioned, that was my biggest issue. Every time I needed to switch sides, I had to unclamp it and reclamp it. And there's no way to do that 100% consistently when you're moving the knife around. You're going to end up introducing slight variations, which allow for slight differences in the edge angle. And it just makes it really hard to sharpen at that point. It takes away a lot of the ease for the user. So this actually, if you push on the back, there's a spot here in the back that if you push it, it allows this to kind of come out, and then you can rotate it. All right, so then when your blade's in there, you can just rotate it from one side to the other. Now, the one thing about that is, in order to do that, if you have a knife that's very long at all, you're going to have this thing situated at the very edge of your table so that the knife can pivot around the end of the table, because otherwise it's going to hit your table when you try to pivot it. For the sake of the video, I don't have this at the end of the table, so I may have to actually pull this out of frame whenever I do that, just so that I can actually spin the knife around. So today, what I have here is the Ontario Rat one that I'm going to, it's a slightly dull here at the tip. I've used it a little bit and got it dull at the tip. It doesn't honestly need much sharpening, but for the sake of the video, it's probably the one I have that needs the most sharpening. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to slide your blade into the clamp, and then this little kind of collet nut here, you're just going to spin this thing until it gets tight, and you're going to clamp it down good and tight. It has kind of rubber on the inside of the clamp, so it's not going to mar your blade, which is one thing that I do like about it. And then you have an adjustment here. I'm going to actually have to turn this so you can see. You have adjustments from 30 degrees all the way down to 15 degrees. And I have actually checked this with an angle guide. At first, I was fairly concerned that this was not accurate because I had some knives that I was under the impression had a 20-degree angle, and it was nowhere near close to that. So, but I did check it with an angle guide, and it is correct. So that just means that my knife was at a different angle than what I thought it was. So anyway, I want to go ahead and kind of just show you how you would do this, or at least how I do this. So the main thing is finding out how to match the angle that's already on the knife, right? Because like I said, I have some that may be advertised as 20 degree, but they're not 20 degree. So unless you want to reprofile that edge, how do you find the angle that's already there? So one of the easiest tricks that most people will show you is to take a Sharpie and you just color over the sharpened part of the bevel or the edge there. And then what you're going to do, and I usually do it with the ceramic hone because I'm not trying to remove metal at this point really, I'm just trying to remove that marker, is I'll set it where I believe that angle is, and then just lightly up and down and see what I'm removing there. So I can see here that this thing is actually at a shallower angle than that 20 degrees because I'm only removing right here on the very bottom of the marker. So if I drop that down a couple degrees to maybe 18, we can see I'm now removing more of that. I'll go down maybe another degree or so. And there, I'm pretty much matching my angle. Now you can see that I've got a little bit of black left, but that's where I kind of got fat with the marker and went further back on the edge. But right about there is probably where I want that to be. That's following more or less the angle that's already established on the edge. And so this one, let's see, we're looking at 20. Yeah, that's about 18 degrees or so is what this one's set at. So so anyway, once I've matched that angle, now I have that 18-degree angle, and I can tell that that's where I have that sharpened. Now I can go ahead and proceed with actually sharpening it. So for that, if you're really having to remove a lot of metal, take out some rolls or dings or anything, you'll start with that 320 grit. If you're reprofiling or anything like that. If you just need to kind of buff up the edge a little, which is honestly where I'm probably at with this knife, and I really only need to do it here at the tip, I can go ahead and move up to that 600. But that is where I wish that, this had something in between that 320 and that 600 would actually work better, something more of a medium grit instead of the coarse and then the fine. But that brings me to another point that I want to talk about before I proceed with actually sharpening this. So there is a kit that you can purchase now that is available, which I'm glad to see that happened. It's an accessory kit that allows you to purchase more grits, kind of in between grits. And also I believe it comes even with like a leather strop as well on one of the stones. Right now, just to give you an idea for price points, as you see it here, this sharpening system, just as it originally came, right now you would pick this up, it'd be about $60, okay? You can purchase the accessory kit that comes with the extra grits is actually $80. And then if you've never purchased this at all, you can actually purchase the elite version of the sharpening system, which comes with the extra grits already included, for 120, which is obviously a better deal if you've not already purchased it. So I have not got around yet to purchasing that $80 accessory kit. It is probably something I will pick up at some point, since I do like having those additional grits. But for now, I just have the original grits. So what you would be looking at for this is pulling down in a motion like this, and just kind of putting a little bit of pressure, but you want to let the stone do most of the work. And so in this case, I would be doing it more toward the tip of the knife, like this, and continuing that. Now, I may do it even the whole way across. Now, I will let you know that realistically, you should be doing downward strokes like this to kind of preserve your grit. I find that sometimes I get in a rush and I sharpen it a lot faster by doing up and down strokes, but you are going to be removing more of that grit from your stone if you do it that way, which is why they don't recommend that. I think they recommend just doing the downward strokes along the blade. So you're just going to be doing it like that, all the way along the blade. And of course, then when you get down to the end of it, and again, I'm not going to actually spend a lot of time sharpening this one. It's more just to show you how it works because it doesn't really need a lot. But once you develop a burr, which you can feel kind of on the other edge of the knife, then it would be time to go ahead and rotate this. So you kind of have to pivot this arm out of the way. And again, you're going to see here that I'm not, well, actually, I will be able to spin it this way because of the way the tip of my knife will clear. But if I had it in the clamp the other direction, or if I had left this side up and had to rotate it back, that wouldn't work because the handle here would have been hitting the table. So this time, I guess if with a little bit of forethought and foresight, you can make sure that you put it so that the tip is going to be the side that has to rotate and not the handle, and then you wouldn't have to worry as much about that. So then you're just going to pull this and you're going to kind of do the same thing. And then as you get to the point where you have gone through the 320, the 600 grit, and you've got that burr going there, and then you want to really polish up the edge, then you're going to switch over to your ceramic. And then the ceramic stone is where you're going to... Now, on the ceramic, I don't feel nearly as bad about doing the up and down because the ceramic isn't a grit that is on there using an adhesive. It's actually just a ceramic. So you can kind of do that up and down, and I don't think you have as much of an issue there. So you can kind of do that until you've knocked that burr off and you've polished that edge a little bit. And again, like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this just for the sake of the length of the video, but that's how the system works. So as far as my thoughts on it, right? So initially, whenever I first bought this system, I don't know that I would have given it super high marks. It probably still would have been all right. But my biggest issue with it would have been the grits, right? The fact that there were only at that time available these 3 grits, and I really did not think that that was a great solution because a lot of people like to get a really highly polished edge, and that was not possible with this sharpening system. However, now that they do have the ability for you to purchase the extra grits, you do have the ability to put a high polish edge on a knife. I actually really like this system. I think it's a great system, especially for beginners who maybe aren't as familiar with how to sharpen a knife and need something that gives them that guide so that they can get that angle. I like that you have the precision of 1 degree increments, so you can get anything you want between 30 and 15 degrees. That angle of edge you can put on a knife. So it allows for kitchen knives, which might have a much thinner edge versus something like a camping knife, which might have a 25 degree versus a kitchen knife with like a 17 degree. So you've got that versatility. The clamping system works great. I like that it doesn't mar up and scratch up my blades. I like that the clamp rotates without me having to take the knife out. It allows me to get a very consistent edge no matter what knife I'm using. I don't have to worry about pulling it out and repositioning it and putting it back in. Now, if you do have a really, really large knife, you may have to move that knife forward and backwards to be able to get this rod all the way out. So, and the other thing you'd have to worry about with a really large knife is whether or not this clamp would even be able to hold it. I have my doubts. So this is really a pocket knife sharpener. So if you've got large fixed blades, I haven't tried it, but I really have my doubts that you'd be able to make it work in here just because of how shallow the groove is for this clamp. Even this one, that's all the further back I can get this spine in there because the spine gets too thick, right? So if I had something that was thicker stock than that, you're not going to really be able to get it in there enough to clamp down on it very well. So all that being said, I'm going to scoot this back so I can get a little more in the frame here. But all that being said, if you're looking for a knife sharpening system for your pocket knives, you want to be able to get a very consistent edge on your knife every time. You want to be able to match the angle from the factory, or really you could even put a new angle on it using the coarser grit. That's fine. This thing, like I said, it does come with the option of just the sharpener for 60, the Elite, which has this plus the extra stones for 120, or if you already have the system, you can pick up the accessory kit for $80. And it also comes with a 3-year warranty from WorkSharp. So far, I've enjoyed it. I think that it's probably, I have multiple sharpening systems. This is not my fastest one necessarily, but I think this is the most consistent one. So on my higher end knives, I like to use this. Now, obviously, there are systems out there that are far, far more expensive that are better than this, right? This is, me personally, because I do know how to sharpen a knife by hand, I've never been willing to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a sharpening system. Definitely never been willing to spend thousands of dollars on a sharpening system. Some people will do that, and that's fine. If that's you, you can definitely pick one up that's better than this. But if you're looking at something for less than $100, or in the case of the Elite, it'd be 120, but otherwise, this is a great system in that price point. I think that you'll be pleased with it. And again, if it's something that you're kind of new to sharpening knives, it is a great way to get consistent performance on your knives when you're trying to get those sharp without having to have a lot of knowledge or any real skill set involved with putting the edge on the knife. So do I recommend it? Absolutely. I think it is probably one of the better entry-level sharpening systems. From everything from the way that the clamp pivots, the rubber inside the clamp to keep from scratching the knives, the fact that the rod itself is easily replaced and exchanged just because it has that magnetic connection. You've got good smooth action here on the up and down on the rod. You've got the ability to change your angle, and they're clearly marked on the system so you know what angle you're at each time. Once if my knife is an 18-degree angle, I know every time I sharpen this knife, I can just adjust this back to 18 and I'm good to go. That way I don't have to do the whole marker test every time, because now I'm going to have to go and clean that marker off with a little bit of alcohol. But just really a lot of thought went into this, and it was done really well. About the only thing I think that they really could have improved on is maybe some way to stabilize this on a table. So the table I'm on right now has a nice soft cushy top, so this isn't going anywhere really on it anyway. But there's just these little anti-skid pads on the bottom, right? So you don't have any way to clamp or suction it to a table. So you would potentially have some movement there depending on the surface that you're working on. That's the one thing I do think they could have improved on, is maybe finding a better way to stabilize this. There's no weight in the base, so it's light, makes it easy to move. Maybe even if they just had a detachable weight that you could put in the base that would hold it, a little more steady. But that is really my only nitpick. Otherwise, the WorkSharp Precision Adjust Knife Sharpener, I think it's a great entry-level knife sharpener.